Everything changed the moment Denise Boggs stepped forward. 4 years, Dyer had been one of those ministries people turned to when they wanted steadiness. A familiar face, a steady message, and a clear promise that faith came first. Marcus Lamb was at the center of that story. A leader who built a media ministry with prayer and steady purpose. So when Denise said she had a recording of Marcus's last instructions from his hospital bed, people who loved that ministry listened closely. What she revealed wasn't small. It was a blueprint, who Marcus wanted to lead, how the family should be arranged in leadership, and a clear plan meant to protect the ministry's future. It was a plan that, according to Denise, was ignored. Before we go deeper into this, if you value honest stories about faith, leadership, and why transparency matters, please take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss follow-ups. Your engagement helps this conversation reach the people who need it most. Now let's get into what Denise said, why people are shocked, and what it all could mean for Dyer's future. Marcus Lamb's last days were not a blur. Denise described him as focused, lucid, and intentional. In the hospital, Marcus asked his daughter to call Denise so he could speak directly to her. He did not ramble. He spoke deliberately. He asked Denise to write things down and to make sure his instructions were delivered. Those instructions weren't vague wishes. They were specific roles and clear names. A plan for how Dyer should move forward after he was gone. At the heart of that plan was Jonathan, Marcus's son. Marcus named him as the primary leader, the one to step forward and carry the vision into the next season. That's a strong claim, but Denise stood by it. She said Marcus affirmed Jonathan as the first lamb who needs to step in, and he named other family members to support that role. Marcus described a structure. Jonathan as the lead, Jonathan's wife Susie as a partner, Rachel and Rebecca with clear roles, and even Rebecca's husband, J.W., included in the leadership circle. This wasn't about favoritism. Denise said Marcus believed in spiritual calling and careful stewardship. He wanted people who understood the mission and who could defend it with integrity. One name was missing. Joshua Brown, Rachel's husband. How that name was left out started whispers and guesses. Joshua was not some distant figure. He was present in operations and visible in the network. Yet Marcus did not include him in the plan. Denise noticed this omission immediately. She did not press Marcus about it in that moment. She felt it might be a private reason only Marcus knew. What mattered, she believed, was delivering the rest of the plan clearly and quickly. Denise did what Marcus asked. She passed the instructions on, to Joni, to family members, and to key leaders. This was the moment when a clear succession plan entered the room. For friends and supporters who heard about it, this was a relief. Marcus, in his final hours, had done what a wise leader should. He named a successor. He sealed a plan with a trusted witness, and he asked that it be followed. But what came next didn't match the plan Marcus had set. Instead of Jonathan stepping in as Marcus had outlined, Joni assumed full control. The smooth transition Marcus had scripted was replaced with a very different scene. Jonathan was reportedly removed from leadership. Not stepped aside in a transparent process, not asked to wait while he recovered, but removed in a way that shocked insiders. Reports began to circulate about pressure being applied to Jonathan and Susie. Denise described scenes of spiritual pressure and silence. People who had known Jonathan as humble and prayerful found it hard to reconcile that image with the way events unfolded. When a founder gives a last instruction, most people expect that wish to be honored, at least discussed. That didn't happen publicly. Instead, Dyer's public face shifted quickly to Joni. She stepped forward as the leader. To some viewers, this looked like a natural move. Joni had been the public partner for decades, seen and trusted by millions. To others, it looked like an abrupt override of Marcus's carefully laid plan. The way the change happened raised other concerns. Denise and others talked about a group, what some insiders called the Dyer Mafia. It's a colorful name, but the stories behind it sounded serious. Former employees and close sources described an inner circle that controlled decisions, guarded power, and pushed back against those who questioned the shift. People spoke about surveillance, intimidation, and a culture that felt less like a spiritual family and more like a power structure that protected itself. If you've been part of a big organization, you know this pattern. When an inner circle forms, questions and dissent are often discouraged. People who try to speak up risk losing access, roles, or relationships. And in a ministry, where the moral authority matters to donors and viewers, those dynamics can do serious damage. That's what many longtime supporters began to say. They felt betrayed, not just by a family change, but by what it suggested about transparency and stewardship at the highest levels. Donors started to ask questions. Many had given faithfully for years. Some gave sacrificially because they believed in the mission and in the leaders. The lack of a clear explanation, the sudden removal of Marcus's chosen successor, and the whispers of a controlling inner circle made people feel unsure about whether their gifts were being used in line with the ministry's mission. Donations slowed. Trust cracked. Money always complicates these stories. Dyer, like many ministries, has expenses. Staffing, production, broadcast, and outreach cost money. But when supporters see secrecy or hear rumors of extravagant spending, a private jet, lavish events, unexplained expenses, they want answers. They want to know who's making decisions and why. They want accountability. And that's not an unreasonable request. When people give to a cause, they expect the organization to be transparent and responsible. So what should people expect from leadership in this kind of situation? First, honesty. If a succession plan changes, leaders should explain why, in clear terms. If a son named by a founder is not taking the role, explain the reasons. Were there concerns about readiness, health, or other conflicts of interest? If there were legitimate reasons to change the plan, lay them out and show how the transition honors the founder's spirit if not the exact names. Second, we should expect processes. Healthy organizations have governance structures that protect mission and clarify decision-making. Family ministries benefit from independent oversight exactly so personal loyalties don't become opaque power plays. When conversation turned public, Denise moved from witness to whistleblower. She felt the need to speak directly because Marcus's plan had been ignored. Her testimony wasn't just gossip. She said she had heard Marcus's voice, had written the instructions down, and had delivered them. That's serious. If a leader with the founder's authority asks someone to record and hand down a succession plan, it's not a small thing when that plan is later set aside. Denise's actions raised an essential question. Who protects the founder's legacy when the family disagrees? There are other deeper layers to this story that deserve attention. One is the emotional cost. Families in the public eye grieve in public. They face pressure to look united, to show strength, and to maintain donations. That pressure can push people into decisions that are practical in the short term but painful in the long term. Maybe Joni believed she was protecting the ministry by taking quick control. Maybe she thought her decades of public leadership meant she was the safe choice to steady the ship. Those are human choices. They can be open to criticism, and they should be open to explanation. Another layer is about stewardship and the role of money in ministry. When donors give, they give to an idea and to people they trust. That trust is fragile. It requires leaders to be honest, consistent, and open to oversight. When that trust is broken, it is not enough to move on quietly. Restoration requires generosity of spirit, a willingness to answer hard questions, and the humility to make amends when mistakes are made. To be clear, this isn't just about personalities. It's about structures. A ministry that places family in control without independent governance invites trouble. When family disagreements happen, they should be resolved by processes that include neutral parties, not by behind-the-scenes pressure. Independent boards, transparent financial reports, and third-party conflict resolution can help prevent scenarios where a founder's wishes are ignored without explanation. What should the public, donors, viewers, and staff ask for now? First, an honest accounting. Not just a PR line. Full answers about the succession decisions, written and explained. If there were disputes about Jonathan's fitness for leadership, explain them. If there were legal or financial complexities that required a different arrangement, disclose them in plain language. Second, a plan for governance. If Dyer wants to rebuild trust, the organization should commit to independent oversight, clear financial reporting, and a public mechanism for addressing concerns. Third, reconciliation. Families can heal, but healing often requires mediation, apology where needed, and a willingness to restore relationships. There are stories of people who stayed at Dyer because they believed. Some staff members tried to keep the programming going, to protect the viewers who relied on the message. Others left in search of places where they felt values and practice matched. That pattern is common when trust erodes. People who prioritize transparency and integrity move on, while institutions that fail to address problems risk losing the very souls who keep the mission alive. Now, some of you might be wondering, what happens next? There are a few paths Dyer could take. One path is continued silence. Keep the culture as it is, defend the decisions internally, and hope donors forget. That path risks long-term decline in support and a growing reputation problem. The second path is partial transparency. Make some changes, put a few policies in place, but avoid full accountability. That path may placate some but won't likely rebuild deep trust. The third path, the healthiest, is radical transparency and reform. Invite independent auditors, open the books, create a governance board with outside members, and initiate a mediated family reconciliation process. That path is the hardest, but it is the one most likely to restore credibility. It's important to say something about Denise's motives, because whistleblowers are often judged as much as the facts they reveal. Denise says she was faithful to her promise to Marcus. She said she wrote down his words and delivered them. She says she did not want to create scandal. She wanted the founder's wish honored. Whether you agree with how she went public, or whether you think she could have handled things differently, you should also consider what would happen if someone in her position stayed silent. Ignoring a founder's last will, if true, would be a serious breach of trust. Someone had to raise the alarm. One other human detail is Jonathan and Susie's choice in all of this. They reportedly did not go public with angry words or lawsuits. They stepped away quietly. That humility has a cost. It robbed supporters of a public conversation that might have clarified things sooner. But it also speaks to something deeper. Not everyone wants a public fight. Some prefer reconciliation away from the cameras. That's understandable, but when leadership affects a public ministry, private reconciliation alone is often not enough to restore wide public trust. This whole situation should be a wake-up call to every ministry, family-run or not. Most ministries begin with good intentions, a calling, and a humble start. But growth brings complexity. Money, legal issues, staffing, and the temptation to protect an image at all costs. Good governance helps preserve spiritual integrity. That means separating family feelings from institutional structures. It means agreeing ahead of time about succession, disclosure, and dispute resolution. It means inviting outside advisors who can offer neutral counsel in crucial moments. If you're a viewer or a donor wondering what you can do, here are a few practical steps. First, ask questions. Your dollars are not private. They're investments in a mission. Ask for annual reports, independent audits, and a clear governance structure. Second, support organizations that practice transparency. Send your gifts where you can see how money is used. Third, pray. Pray for families under pressure. Pray for the integrity of ministries that matter to you. Pray that truth and reconciliation find their way into every decision. For people who work inside ministries, this is a reminder to insist on policies that protect mission. Don't wait for a crisis to create a board. Don't wait for a scandal to adopt clear financial standards. Put those things in place now. A ministry that claims to represent spiritual truth should model the highest standards of stewardship. Finally, for the family involved, the path forward is also about healing. There is space for redemption in every story. If Joni believes she was doing the right thing, she can still explain it and seek forgiveness where needed. If Jonathan and Susie were pushed out unfairly, restoration is possible if leaders are willing to admit error and make amends. If the inner circle behaved in ways that discouraged openness, those members can step back and allow for independent guidance. None of these steps are easy. All of them are possible. At the center of this story is a father's voice recorded during a difficult season. Marcus's final instructions were meant to protect a legacy bigger than any single person. Ignoring that voice without clear public explanation left a wound in the community. Denise's courage in speaking up forced a conversation people had been too polite to begin. That conversation is messy, painful, and necessary. If you've been following this story, what do you think should happen next? Should Dyer open its books and invite independent oversight? Should the family enter a mediated reconciliation? Or is it too late to save what was lost? I want to hear from you. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you have questions you want us to ask of the leadership or ideas for how to rebuild trust in ministries, share them. We will use credible questions to guide any follow-up coverage. Before we close, one more request. If you found this video helpful, if it cleared up the facts, or if it pushed you to think about transparency and accountability, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who cares about ministry integrity. These issues matter far beyond one story. They affect how people give, how families heal, and how communities trust faith leaders. Thank you for listening. Keep asking the hard questions. Keep caring about truth and kindness in equal measure. And remember, leadership is not just about power. It's about service, stewardship, and leaving something good for the next generation. Like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll keep tracking this story with updates and fair, careful coverage.